Look around the US and the rest of the world. Chances are that housing is so unbelievably expensive that the average household is facing an impending crisis. We look at the rates people are paying today, and it's quite obvious that in a few years they will be paying more. But what needs to be noted is that they're already at the maximum debt that they can handle. What will be the result? You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at the housing crisis in the United States. I'm going to connect that in with Hong Kong. I'm going to talk about the rest of the world. We have a disaster that's waiting for us as interest rates rise. That means borrowing costs are rising. That means it's more expensive. That means more of your income is going towards housing. Stick with me. I got a jam-packed episode for you today. First, I want to look at this chart. Housing affordability. This is talking about California, but I want to use this as an example to apply to other places as well. This is from 2006 to 2018 on the left-hand side. Percentage of households that can buy a median-priced home. And these numbers continue to fall over that period of time where, hey, everybody can get a home now because of subprime, and this was boosting up the prices considerably. It was becoming quite ridiculous. Now, a lot of people started to default. You saw the foreclosures that were going on. The Federal Reserve comes in, they reduce interest rates. As a result, mortgage rates start to decline, which were already very low as it is, but they're trying to make it more affordable, and they did. And that allowed a lot of people to get into housing. So after that fallout, then people started buying the houses up again. And throughout this time here, we can see that there was a period, clearly, where housing was relatively affordable to a large percentage of people. Not everybody's always going to be able to afford a home. That's just not the way it works. However, you want a large body of people, not necessarily that they're buying the home, but that they can afford it, meaning they have enough income coming in. Okay, and then as you see as time goes on, that has become less and less affordable. Right here into 2018, only 26%. All right, so very few people, in fact, today are able to actually buy a home. That tells us something. Either the price of the homes, their income, or both. Minimum annual income required during the affordability peak versus current. I'll just take the example of Los Angeles. Back in 2012, $53,000. In 2018, it's $112,000. Percentage change being over 100%. I mean, that's unbelievable to see the change in these few years. Now, this is out of Brookings, and I want to cover this very quickly here. Talk about some of the things that really make a lot of sense. Housing costs are an immediate concern to many U.S. families and to policymakers. If people spend, quote, too much on housing, that's defined by HUD as more than 30% of their income, they may not be able to afford other necessities such as food or healthcare. So imagine that right there. 30% of their income goes to rent or their mortgage. Suddenly, they're spending, quote, too much. And then they can't buy things like food and healthcare, or they need to cut out this or that. We've got a problem because a lot of people are in that situation. And it depends on where you look. Around the United States, you have a different problem. But I'm going to touch on that in a second here because we see some statistics that come out. We also see people trying to make it seem like housing is still very reasonable. And they're also trying to make it seem like people can take on a lot of debt because of their income, because of the affordability of borrowing today. And I'm going to try to explain why that really isn't the case. Okay, it depends on where you live, surely. But let's look at this next chart here. The U.S. does not have a national affordability problem. Household weighted distribution of the price-income ratio. All right. The reason I mention this is simply because you can take the United States on a national level, and it would not be a good depiction of pretty much every place. Think about that. We take the national level. It's not going to give us a good idea of what's happening in San Francisco. It's not going to give us a good picture of what's happening somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the United States. So on average, generally, it's not a really good thing to do. But sometimes you want to make commentary, you want to share some points, and you can say, okay, in general, housing in the United States is going up. But it's not really giving us a good picture. I mean, here you want the truth, you got to dig into it. You can't just see some statistic in the newspaper and think you're smart, okay? That's just not the way it works. You have to read into it further. You have to look into it further, okay? So what I wanted to just suggest to you is look around the United States and how diverse it is, and that's just one country. If we go along the West Coast, you take somebody from West Coast, you take somebody from Texas, you take somebody from Miami, you take somebody from Maine, you take somebody from right smack dab in the center in the United States, and you try to break down, what's the average here? And there really isn't. There's going to be such diversity, and that happens to be with housing prices and incomes and everything. So averages, not so good, all right? That's what I really want to talk about. Now look at this. This is interesting. I never saw anyone do this before. Brookings has this interesting chart. Saltwater coastal metros have the highest price-to-income ratios. Household weighted distribution of the price-income ratio by proximity to the coast. Interesting. I mean, it's expected that a lot of those coastal regions are going to be more expensive, whether you're looking at California, maybe you're looking at Miami or so on. Depends, of course. And inland being cheapest. Okay? Fresh water, I'm assuming that's referring to the Great Lakes area. So just wanted to show that to you, and there's a map that goes along with that. Hard to become a homeowner versus hard to build housing wealth. So there is this battle in between the two, and I want to suggest to you that we should not be building our wealth based on our own property. That's not a good thing. Really, using your home as an ATM is a big risk. I think it's too risky because your home shouldn't be used as collateral on something else. You shouldn't be pulling equity out. That's not a good way to do things, all right? If you want to buy a real estate property and then you want to use that to produce income, you've got those monthly paychecks coming in, that's a different story. But not to have your own property and think, well, now I want to send my kids to college, so I'll just take the equity out. Eventually, that catches up with you. So you can see right here on the coasts how expensive there are certain cities right here. And whether it is going on the coast, California, whether you're looking at areas, Manhattan's going to be obviously pretty expensive. But then take a look at some of the other areas, very low right here. Right around the Great Lakes region. Happens to be very affordable. Definitely. All right? So that's that. Housing expenditure as a percentage of the household gross adjusted disposable income. And this is comparing the United States with other countries. All right? And it's still very, very affordable. There's no doubt. Very clear that I look at the United States, I think that this happens to be very cheap when you look at some of the areas. But if I take San Francisco, for example, I'm not getting the regular average picture. But what is average, as I said, right? So this right here, housing expenditure as a percentage of the household gross adjusted disposable income, suddenly looks a lot better than other places. When you take the averages, you start to skew the image. And that's all I'm really trying to show you. Housing, rooms per person. I thought this was really unique here that Canada tops the list. Do we really have a lot of rooms in our homes? We actually are higher up than the United States, New Zealand beyond that, Australia there. And we look at the other end of the spectrum where you have places like Mexico, it's 1. Even Greece, 1.2. Other areas like Italy is 1.4 and so on. So that just tells us, not just is this person able to afford a home, but how much space does that home occupy? You can do this by square footage. You can do it by rooms in a house. I mean, there's all different ways, of course. This here, average floor space of newly built homes. This article, I grabbed it out of BBC, but the sources are at the bottom there. And you could see that in meters squared. Looking at the US on the very top, Australia is in second, and actually the UK is significantly lower, the smallest of the list from what I remember from that article. The UK, 76, whereas the US, 214. So big disparity in between the two, there's no doubt. And this was an interesting looking infographic where the $1 million houses are. Median home prices are through the roof in high demand Golden State cities. Whether we're looking at San Francisco, whether we're looking at LA and so on, depends here on the pricing, but it's just interesting the way they did this in their graph. You can zoom in a little closer to get a good idea. A place like Austin is a lot cheaper than a place like San Jose, just depending on that area, and they really break it down closely here. There are 22 major cities in the United States with more than 1% of their housing stock in the $1 million range. So that's that. There's expensive, so there's extremely expensive, and there's it's overpriced. There's a difference. A place like Austin is going to be a lot more affordable than a place like San Francisco, but it's still more expensive than many other cities in the United States. You could scroll down here, see it on the chart if you'd like. But what I would like to show you here is further along, one last one, and that's to connect this in with Hong Kong. The number of people sleeping in Hong Kong McDonald's branches skyrockets as residents battle high rents and substandard housing. I couldn't believe this. I mean, you scroll through, you see the images of people literally making McDonald's their home. There's video about it here, and more videos talking about this and pictures. Essentially just goes through. You can see how many people are just they're out of it. I mean, there's countless pictures actually on social media platforms just showing you this. I thought it was amazing to see how much that they're willing to expand the bubble that people have to live in the McDonald's. It's the government that allows this to occur. They're the ones who are making these crises exist in the first place. We have central banks that exist only to inflate or deflate bubbles as they see fit. And then this is the result. So you could say, well, look, all these homeowners are doing just fine, but what about those other people? You know, that big group of people, like in the United States right now, you have 3/4 of the people that fit into that group who can't afford housing. Right. Nobody cares though. All right. If you found the video informative, please give me a thumbs up. When you give me a thumbs up, it helps to support the channel, so I do appreciate that very much. And if you want the financial education you are not taught in schools, these 2 books have it all. I will explain everything to you that you need to know to be able to manage your own finances, to be able to take care of yourself and your family, or to take your money to that financial advisor, but ask the right questions. So those 2 books can be flipped through at Amazon. The link is in the description of the video. But if you're more interested in the audiobook version, you can get that at themoneygps.com.